The evening. But Michael Kroger, you picked up a bit of a rumour that's going around the traps. We're getting towards the pointy end of the election season, and there'll be a lot of talk about preference deals coming up. The Liberals and the Greens in Victoria, what's going on?
Well, there is a bit of a rumour. I haven't tracked down whether there's validity to it, but it's been around for a couple of days now that the Greens are trying to do a deal with us, that they give us preferences in Melbourne ports if we give them preferences in Melbourne. And the result of that would be, according to Green theory, that Adam Bandt gets re-elected on Liberal preferences and Michael Danby gets defeated by the Liberal candidate on Liberal preferences. Now, as I said, I'm not sure whether it's true, but it's doing the rounds. My own view would be, I'm in the Senator Helen Kroger faction on this issue. I wouldn't do a deal with the Greens under any circumstances at all, and I would prefer to see Kath Botel in Melbourne and Michael Danby in Melbourne ports if it meant that the price of us winning Melbourne ports was to do a dirty deal with the Greens to get them re-elected in Melbourne. I wouldn't do that transaction. In any case, David, I think what would happen is the Green would get elected in Melbourne and the Green voters in Melbourne ports, despite being directed to preference us, wouldn't. And instead of getting 80%, Labor would probably get 75%, Danby get re-elected. So I think the Liberals would lose both ways. But I don't think you should ever do it. I don't think the Liberal Party should ever do a deal with the Greens because they're a poisonous and insidious influence on Australian politics. Because
there have been mixed views in the Liberal Party on this, and I know at the last state election in Victoria, Ted Baillieu took the principled position not to do any deals with the Greens, preference swaps with them. That paid off clearly, but it would boost the Liberals' chances in Melbourne ports in particular, wouldn't it?
Look, it probably would. And in theory, if you get Green preferences, if Liberals get Green preferences, you'd think Danby would then be defeated because there's a big swing against Labor in Victoria. But as I said, I'm not sure the Green voters would necessarily follow that direction. And I don't think I'd want to be, as much as I love the Liberal candidate in Melbourne ports, Kevin, and the team he's got working for him, I don't think I'd want to be elected on the basis that I did a deal with the Greens and they got me over the line. That would be a cross you'd have to bear. I prefer the voters in Melbourne ports to say that Kevin Eckertill's a much better candidate than Mr Danby and vote for him on that basis. And you're right, before the last state election there was contemplation of doing a deal with the Greens that would defeat Labor in 4 inner city seats. There was an outcry in the Victorian Party against doing a deal with the Greens. Helen Kroger and people like John Howard came out very strongly. Kevin Andrews came out very strongly against doing any deals with the Greens whatsoever. In the end, the state parliamentary leadership agreed with that view. Ted Baillieu, then leader, came out and said, yes, no, we're not going to do a deal with the Greens. The Liberal vote went up dramatically because people said, thank God you're taking a principled position against these Greens.
Simon, let me just ask what you think about this, because if there is even the sniff of a Liberal-Green preference swap, Labor, despite having been in government alliance with the Greens through much of the term of this parliament, would leap all over that, wouldn't they?
I'm sure they probably would. I mean, what it would show, I think pretty clearly, if true, is that the Greens are just another political party that are prepared to, do whatever it takes to keep a member of their party in the parliament. Look, I think Adam Bandt is under pressure in Melbourne. The Green vote round the country has taken a bit of a hit. In every actual poll that's taken place since the last federal election, the Greens have taken a bit of a hit, whether at the state or local government level. So, I think they are worried about the seat of Melbourne. But I think Labor does have a good candidate in Kath Botel. I mean, the reality is that she probably would have won last time if there hadn't been a Green Liberal preference deal in the seat of Melbourne. So, look, I think one to watch, seat to watch. I don't think Labor strategists, though, will be up late tonight going through all the permutations around that one.
And pointing out it's still only a rumour at this stage.
Well, I might say, David, that the Liberal Party was wrong. We were wrong to preference the Greens at the last federal election. We should have preferenced Kath Botel and had her elected, not the Greens. So if anyone's to blame for what happened, we are. And that's a mistake we should never make again.
All right.